Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
Disgusting. I'm watching disgusting basketball. The Sixers are on a putrid stretch as they are now 9-18 away from the Wells Fargo Center. They just got blown out the gym. It wasn't even a contest. 137 points scored on them. Jimmy Butler in only 3 quarters drops 38 points, and I miss Jimmy Butler. I really do. There's something to be said about the way that guy plays, his mentality, the way he has the alpha mentality where he wants the ball in his hands and he wants to take over games and he wants to dominate his opponent. He was something special, and I miss that. I truly do miss that. I wanted to keep Jimmy Butler so bad, but when I heard there was a mutual, not disagreement, but a mutual parting, I was upset. Because of this type of basketball game. He has the ability to do that type of damage. He destroyed the Sixers in this one. I've never said the words fire Brett Brown. Here's the thing when it comes to Brett right now. There is a problem, and when you lose by 20, 30 points on a nightly basis, that's when it comes down to something needs to change. I don't scream fire Brett Brown when they win 3 games in a row, but then they lose to a bad team on the road, or they win 5 of 7 and then they end up falling in a game that they should have won. Things like that, where some fans who despise Brett Brown will instantly go after him in those moments. I don't do that. When I go after a coach, besides Gabe Kapler, Gabe Kapler's really the only one from the jump where I was not excited about anything that he did. So besides him, I don't just scream, get rid of a guy, because this isn't NBA 2K20. This isn't video games where you can hire anyone you want and anyone you hire out there. Any trade you make will just happen because you can click the A button, right? This is real professional sports. But when it hits this type of stretch where you are getting blown out, your team's not even involved, and when your team has the potential to actually be a competitive basketball squad, it flat out can't happen. So when you get this every single game against really good opponents where your team can't even get up, where your team can't even give effort, where your team gives up defensively, there's something to be said about that. And that's when you look at Brett Brown and say, dude, this falls on you. Now, the players play the game. They absolutely play the game. But when it gets to this degree, which it has not been to this degree under Brett Brown when he had a normal roster. I don't count the process years. When he had a normal roster, it was never to this level. Now that it is, all right, it's a different ball game now. Because you can't keep throwing this out for the rest of the season. I look at this offense, and it looks 3,000 times worse than it ever has. I watched 3 guys try and post up in the same possession. Joel Embiid tried to post up, he couldn't get the ball. Ben Simmons tries to post up, he couldn't get the ball. Tobias Harris then posts up his guy and tries to shoot the ball. I've never seen that before in my life. I watched Al Horford jack up a 3 seconds into the shot clock. The Sixers were running up court. Al Horford's running full speed, gets to the 3-point line. Ben delivers a pass, and he just pops it. That is not Al Horford's game whatsoever. I've been screaming that Al Horford has not been utilized properly since he's been here this season. He's not that type of guy. There's no reason for him to be doing that. And at the end of the third quarter, I watched Furkan Korkmaz try and dribble around a pick. He couldn't get any separation. He desperately passes it to Shake Milton, who had to double clutch jack it up when 2 guys were on him, and it hit off the backboard crazily. Like, those were the possessions I've seen over the last few games, more than I've ever seen in my life. Like, I've seen these more than I have throughout a really long time with this team. The offense has never been pretty and beautiful, but it has been 3 million, I'll even go 3 million times worse over the last 3 games during this road trip. The Atlanta game, the game against Boston, and now against this team in the Miami Heat. They got embarrassed. Ben Simmons is calling the team soft after the game. That's great. Talk all you want. And I'm not coming after Ben for calling the team soft. I prefer him to do that because they are soft. But all this talk, Joel Embiid saying all this stuff about the 6th seed, I'm done with it. I'm done with it. Now, Joel and Ben didn't have bad games, but just like the game against Boston, I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn. I'm not giving anybody credit. When you lose by 31 points, was that the finish? I don't even know. I didn't even write the Sixers number down. All I know is they allowed 137. What am I supposed to give Joel Embiid praise for dropping 29 points? He had a great first quarter. He was knocking down his shots. He was aggressive. But I don't care about his 29. I don't care about his double-double. I don't care about Ben right now with his points. What did he finish with? 16, 8, and 7? He's been knocking down free throws. That's a positive. But really, am I supposed to say, all right, you know what? There's a positive. Ben Simmons and his free throws. No, this team is getting abused. They're getting embarrassed. I've always had a little bit of optimism when it came to this team. I've stated for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks now that this team clearly doesn't have enough to make a finals run. That was noticeable back in, let me see, September, October, November. I'm doing the math here in months. But I'd say November. You realize they didn't really have enough. But I was still optimistic that, hey, they're in the mix with every other team. And I believe they have the potential to be in the mix with everybody else because their talent is there. But with the way this talent is playing as a team, it's nowhere even close to good enough. They have a talented roster. They have a brutal team right now. And that's the annoying part because they have fallen apart. That optimism that I had, it is completely gone. Think about it. I'm at the point now where you see this type of basketball, I am saying the words, fire Brett Brown. You need to do something. You can't allow this to continue. Something is not right. And whether it's right or wrong, that falls on the head coach. And Brett Brown has lost it, absolutely lost it. I'm looking at some of these offensive sets and my mind is blown. It hasn't been to this level of disturbing watching some of these offensive possessions. They're not even involved in the game. They're allowing 40-plus points in the third quarter. They're allowing Jimmy to drop 17, 15 in quarters at will. They can't defend a lick. The pick and roll is still a problem. How can you not defend a pick and roll? It's 2020. Every team does a pick and roll every possession. That's when Ben claimed that this team is soft because they're not fighting over screens. They're just allowing the guy to do the pick that he wants, and then he takes a mid-range J. And speaking of mid-range J, I know it's not going to happen, but it just kills me inside to continue to see this. Ben Simmons wide open at the free throw line. Wide open. Both defenders sag off of him to go on Joel Embiid underneath the basket. So what is he doing? He's completely wide open. He passes it to 3. Literally passes it behind him for a 3. That was a brick. Take the damn shot, Ben. Take the damn shot. That's happened a lot over the last few games. He would be wide open because both defenders sag down, and he's been, instead of kicking it out like he did in this basketball game, he would float it into the double team, whether it's to Al Horford or Joel Embiid. You're wide open, dude, from the free throw line. And this is coming from a big-time Ben supporter, but it doesn't mean he doesn't force me to want to rip my hair out. It's not like I watched this full game, though. I was so checked out. This is another game where I'm checked out. I wasn't watching possession by possession. You're on drugs if you're watching that game possession by possession once it's in the second half and it's a 75-point game. This is just a disgrace. It really is. Now, we're 10 minutes in or so, and I've yet to give a word for my sponsor because I just started rolling because it's eating me alive. But we need to hear a word from my sponsor, SeatGeek. Are you looking to buy tickets to a game or a concert? Any game, any concert. If so, you can use the promo code BROADS at SeatGeek's checkout page for $20 off of your total purchase. That's free parking. It's a no-brainer to use the promo code BROADS today. Here's something that is terrible. Al Horford, 6 points. Tobias Harris, 6 points. Now, I will say this. I've defended the moves Elton Brand has made because you got to realize, when he made these moves last season, the Sixers, at a historic rate, were minus as soon as Joel Embiid left the floor. So what did Elton Brand do in the offseason? He got a guy who can step in for Joel Embiid when he's not on the floor. Now, it hasn't been pretty with Al Horford. There's no denying it. But the mindset when the signing happened was we needed a guy who can come in and play on the floor when Embiid is not. And the whole fan base loved it. Loved it. Because it made logical sense. Now, it's not working out right now. I don't think Al Horford's being utilized properly. I watch this offense, and I can't even defend Brett Brown. It's abysmal. It looks like not even high school basketball. Elementary school basketball. It's that bad. I can't even defend it. I can't even try to defend it. I laugh in disgust when I see some of the things that are occurring on the offensive side of the floor. So I'm not sold that this rotation won't work. Do they need more? They do need more. They need bench help. They need a real sixth man. They need help. But in terms of the starting five and Al Horford in the mix and playing with Joel Embiid and playing with this core, I'm not sold that it won't work. I'm sold that Brett Brown doesn't know how to use these players. I gave him plenty of time. I gave him more time than anybody else out there. But right now, it's clear he can't get the most of these players in his offense. I even tweeted, because I was going back and forth with some people on Twitter after the game, and essentially I was saying, I'm not even mad with the roster in terms of what Elton Brand did. And somebody claimed, well, Elton Brand's pieces did not fit Brett's puzzle. And that's fair. It did not fit Brett's puzzle. But that same person who came after me and said that, he's been screaming for Brett Brown's firing for 3 years now because Brett Brown sucks, according to him. So what I'm trying to say here is, if you're going to say Brett Brown sucks for 3 years and then be mad that Elton Brand's pieces don't fit Brett's scheme, but Brett sucks, maybe his pieces will fit someone else's scheme who doesn't suck. You know what I'm trying to say here? I'm not moving on from these guys until I see them with another coach, with another scheme. Because I think it can work if utilized properly. But what Al Horford's doing, that's not his game. Like, he's not being used to his strengths. Now, Tobias, on the other hand, 6 points is unacceptable. It's flat out unacceptable. I have no words for that. Is Tobias Harris overpaid? Are we going to have this same conversation? We all knew at the time of the signing that he was overpaid, but he still averages 20 points per game. He still helps this team, right? He does. Now, 6 points doesn't in this game, but no one had a good game. Don't tell me Joel Embiid. Don't tell me Ben Simmons. Don't tell me Mike Scott. Even Mike Scott had 17 points. When you lose by 30 points, no one had a good game. No one. Tobias can't have 6 points. He goes through stretches where he gives you 20 plus. He scores 34, and he's a dominating force in a basketball game. He needs to do that more consistently. He has too many of these 6-point games, 8-point games, 10-point games. Don't get me wrong. There are plenty of 20-point games, and I think they go unnoticed because he's normally not the guy you stare at. Like, Ben will have 24 9 and 8, and Tobias will have 22, and no one will really remember the 22 of Tobias Harris because Ben Simmons is a flashier name, he's a flashier player, and he has the ball in his hands more. Joel Embiid will have 29 points or 32 points and 17 rebounds. Tobias Harris will have 20 points. Well, no one will really talk about Tobias' 20 points because Joel Embiid, the big star, the big man, got the job done and executed and had a ton of points. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying when I'm talking about Tobias Harris and how he does normally give you a decent game, but he does throw in these type of games too much for my liking. And he's better than that, though. That's the thing. He's better than that. And I wonder if, based off of just how poor the scheme is and how he's backing down guys and posting up guys and things like that, if that's the best way for him to get going. Now, he has the size advantage at times, so if you have the size advantage, I understand doing it here and there. But maybe the whole scheme and the way everyone's being used is kind of hurting everyone's game. It's crazy. This is an ugly, ugly stretch. And Elton Brand is aggressive. We all know that. I've been pretty clear on my stance with Brett Brown saying it would not be beneficial to fire a coach this late into the season. Well, if you continue to get this out of this team, 20-point blowouts where they're not involved, where you can't even watch, it's unwatchable basketball, they're not engaged, you can't continue to do this. You have to get rid of him. Now, I wonder if Elton is so aggressive that he would move on from one of these contracts. Who knows with Elton Brand? He's done so many big-time splashes. He's not afraid to do anything, it seems. So I wouldn't put it past him. But for me personally, I'm not giving up on any one of these starting 5 guys until I see it not work with another coach. Unreal. The next time they play, the trade deadline would have already occurred. So the trade deadline ends Thursday afternoon. Their next game is against Milwaukee on Thursday. Who knows? If they get a Robert Covington, which if you saw the news, he's trying to go for a second round pick. 2 first-round picks is what I meant. The Minnesota Timberwolves are trying to get 2 first-round picks for him. That's never going to happen. Of course, you're going to go high, and then you're going to work your way down as you start talking with teams. We're not a D Rose away. We're not a Robert Covington away. We're not a lot of things away right now. Because it comes down to the starting rotation guys not playing their game. They're not performing at a high level, and I don't think the coach is helping them at this moment. And it has come to that time. And I even tweeted it. It's at that time. I am more open than ever before about Brett Brown. But here's what I won't accept. I told you, bros, I've been saying it for 5 years. This guy's not it. You give coaches time to figure things out. And he has never had this type of stretch with a team that was worthy in his entire career. But when it gets this low, when it gets this bad and this embarrassing, that's when I look at the coach and say, it might be time for a change. That's when the trigger gets pulled for me. I don't do it when they lose a regular season game after winning 3 in a row, even if it's against an Orlando Magic or an Atlanta Hawks or a Cleveland Cavaliers. I don't freak out if they win 4 games of 6 games, but they lost to 2 bad teams. Things like that, no, I don't freak out about that. But this, come on. This is the low of the low of the low of the low. I'm pissed off at the players for Tobias Harris and Al Horford to have those type of games. They need to make shots. But when it gets like this, it is full on about the head coach. Because this is terrible. The bench is terrible too. Ugh. That Furkan Korkmaz run starting to die out, isn't it? And he's starting to go back to what he was. Now, every time I say that about a player, Whether it's Claude Giroux with the Flyers, who hasn't been really picking it up. Whether it's Joel Farabee, who went on a 15-game streak without scoring a goal. Every time I call someone out like that, they end up making it happen and making noise. So I would assume, since I just called out Furkan Korkmaz and stated he went back 3,000 steps, that he's going to go off for 57 points against the Milwaukee Bucks, because that's how this works. So we'll see. That'll be fun. That'll be fun. This is just incredible, though. Watching the Miami Heat shoot 56.5% from the field. Hey, listen, I'm sure the Sixers had some fun at the Super Bowl. They were in Miami. They went to the game. Ben Simmons put up on his Instagram story or Snapchat story that he was at the game. I'm sure they had fun. Good. I'm glad they had fun. Now, I'll be honest with you. Are they allowed to go to that game? Yeah, absolutely. If I was on the Sixers, we were in Miami, and the Super Bowl was in Miami that same night, would I go? Yes. They are allowed to have a life after. So I guess I'm somewhat contradicting myself here because I was being sarcastic and being facetious. It's okay for them to go to the Super Bowl if they're in town. Now, if they had a game in New York and they flew to Miami for the game and then flew back to New York, different story, I would be disgusted. But listen, you come out the next night and you lose by 30 and you have Jimmy Butler wax you all night long and you have some other players wax you too. Yeah, of course I'm going to bring it up. What a disgrace. I've lost a lot of hope with this team. The little amount of optimism that I had, it ain't there anymore. This team is ugly. And it's not even fun. It's to an obnoxious level of frustration. You can't even watch them. I remember 2 years back when I would record these videos and post-game shows, I couldn't wait for the Sixers to play every night. I was so pumped. I was so intrigued. I was so happy to discuss them. Expectations changes a lot, doesn't it? It really does. We are last year's version of the Boston Celtics. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that thumbs up button and subscribe, and I will see you next time.